Welcome back to the Arise interview, where we speak to the newsmakers as well as ordinary people doing extraordinary things around the world and featuring the voices at the heart of the stories. I'm Charles Anyagolu. Now, there are tens of millions of women in Nigeria and around Africa, and just a few of them are going to be getting together this week in Abuja to talk about their lives, their hopes, and their dreams of a better future. And this is crucially important, of course, because there are 3.5 billion women in the world, and that opens up lots of opportunities as well as risk. Millions of girls have been aborted by families who prefer to have sons. Female genital mutilation is a fact of life for many, even some infants. But there is also good news for women. Many of them are attending school in sub-Saharan Africa. But when graduation arrives, so do new challenges of finding the right jobs and ascending to leadership positions. Nevertheless, many women are making gains in the job market, but their wages are still on average below those of men. Still, the world is changing compared with 100 years ago, and many women are in cabinet and boardrooms in Nigeria and hold seats at the National Assembly, and slowly but surely they're bringing more focus to gender issues, which is why this Global Women in Leadership Conference is taking place to take stock and assess where things go from here in Nigeria. Now, the convener of that conference is Olaide Awosedo, who runs an NGO known as the Gallant Women Ability Foundation, and she joins me now in the studio. Thank you very much
good afternoon,
indeed for coming in.
Thanks, Charles, for having me again.
How much does the issue of gender loom large in leadership across the board in Nigeria?
The gap is quite much. The gap is a lot, and that's what we're trying to in global women leadership, we're trying to bridge the gap, trying to narrow it down and to bring together what we can. We're not right competing with the men, but we're just trying to bring it close, to bridge it and close it a little bit. It's quite far, but we need to come together and bring something on the table so we can get there.
Well, give us a sense of how far this gap is.
In figures, I can't really say in figures, but it's quite a large gap for the women and the male gender. The gap is quite much. I have my figures here, and it's the life. Okay, yeah, the gap is about 75.8% of these people, of women, are really not really advantaged compared to the male gender. So it's something we just try to close. Like I said, it's not a competition against the men, but we just want to try to involve the women participation in so many industries in Nigeria. And we also want to narrow it down to women living with disabilities and the less privileged children. That's what we really want to enact on. Right.
So your argument is that women are represented in such narrow categories that whatever sector it is, the representation of women is pretty appalling.
Yes, low, very, very low, very low. In most industries, it's mostly men, being at the top. So what we're trying to do now is just to break the glass ceiling here. We just want to shatter the glass ceiling, not in an aggressive way, but in a very subtle way whereby women come together to help each other be entrepreneurs and be women in leadership. We shouldn't just put it in a place where this is where a woman can get to, in as much as she's still in the workplace, but we want something better. The women want something better. So it's like a glass ceiling we want to shatter.
So what happens then at the moment of women getting education? Because there are a lot of women who are going to school. I mean, higher education, all the rest of it. Because many of them, are, as I said, are very well educated. What happens after that that stops them from breaking through this glass ceiling that you're talking about?
Like I said, it's I'd say it's more like a stereotype, because they feel after going to school, after having so much education, a woman is retired in the other room or something like that. Probably she doesn't, there's little she can do because of childbirth and other family commitments. So I feel it's something that needs to be looked into and say, why is this really happening? Why can't the women, you know, go further? Like I said, it's more of a stereotype thing. And that's why we just want to break the barrier. We want to break the stereotype and let women go further.
And of course, you're talking about women in general, and women with disability in particular, aren't you? Tell us more about that.
Yeah. Things, I run a charity, an NGO that has to do with, it's Gallant Women Ability Foundation. It's to empower women living with disabilities. And we found out that the funding, the awareness is quite low. And I found out that there isn't much people can really do. We're just like every other NGOs doing the same thing. Then an idea just came in and said, okay, the only way to do this thing is to gather women in leadership together, because women, we have to support each other. Women in leadership, I'm a retail banker, and I was like, okay, gather women in leadership together in, you know, in all industries, you know, so that they can all come together, network, partner with them, and also exchange knowledge. Women in leadership, like we have loads of them, you know, who have reached the, you know, the high-ranking sectors. And so it's a platform to bring them together and to network, to partner, and also to exchange ideas so that we can use this opportunity of these women in leadership to help the downtrodden women, the less privileged, and the women with disabilities. So
yeah, but of course the problem of disability is not unique to women, is it? I mean, in a country like Nigeria, I mean, the men suffer as much as the women do.
Yeah, but I would say women with disabilities, I think we're facing two things. One, to be a woman that faces stereotype, but being a woman, you're a woman. And the other one being having a disability. So these are two things someone is dealing with, being a woman on its part, and the other one being physically challenged or probably with disabilities. So there's a bit of disadvantage she has on her part. So this is what we're trying to bridge, and we're trying to empower them.
Right.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you touched on this briefly, talking about, you know, the women in leadership coming to your conference.
Yeah.
How do you propose that we go about empowering women so they feel that they can make choices and are not being held back by reductive stereotypes?
So coming together, bring this women, because what I've done really is to network with women sectors, like what's it called, women leaders. I've been to Diaspora Commission, Honorable Abike Minister for Women's Affairs. You know, these are women that inspire you, and really they're really people who are really into helping one another. So bring them together with the same idea, with the same passion for women's growth. So these are the people that we want to come together to do something, and much more. And we also have the men as well, not only the women here, because we have the men who are supporting the women in the person of Otumabenga Daniel, the Emir of Lafayette. They're really in support, and Prince Afonja as well. To mention a few, really, they're really people who are really happy, you know, to see what we are doing, and they are really happy to support us for us to get to where we want to get to, really.
But I mean, to be fair, we see a pretty big representation of women in government. You mentioned a number of them. We see a lot of them in the professions: lawyers, doctors, engineers, journalists. I mean, in the arts and entertainment. Given all that, I mean, why is it then that there is still this discrepancy in the way women see themselves as represented?
I think it's just a myth, really.
What's a myth?
the myth that women are just
represented. But they are represented.
No, not to the extent of the way the men are being represented. Like I think there's a threshold for women to say, okay, it stops here.
Right. But what are the facts and figures? Because that's what you use. I mean, you have to number crunch, don't you? So that excuse me, we can properly know what it is that, I mean, what the disparity is, what the differences are. You see what I mean? Because without those figures, we can't really say conclusively that this is the case.
Okay,
we'll be talking anecdotally.
Yeah, I would say women are less likely than men to own land. 75.8% of the poorest women have never been to school, compared to 28% of men. Then in Jigawa State, 95% of women against 42% of men are illiterates.
Illiterate.
Are illiterate. The challenge of the gender diversity, particularly in the workplace and other fields, is widely acknowledged. This is in the light of the Global Women Leadership Conference.
I mean, you're right in the sense that I don't think there's any doubt that we live in patriarchal societies. You know, where men predominate.
No, of course,
but the fact is that there has been a tremendous burst of energy and tremendous changes. And the question is, at the pace that it is going, is that satisfactory to you, or would you like it to move at a much faster pace? Because some people would argue that, hey, you know, 100 years ago, it wasn't like this. Women couldn't vote. Today, they not only vote, I mean, you have, you know, I mean, a president of a country, Tanzania in Africa, you've got women in cabinet positions, you know, you've got women, I mean, you look at Nigeria's, the President Buhari's cabinet has got a number of women in it. I mean, and they're saying that's progress.
There's progress. I would commend it, but let's not stop there. We can do more. In as much as I'm not going to condemn what we have now, because at the end of the day, I told you, men are supporting this movement. Unlike before, probably approaching a man to say, oh, daddy, please support me to do this. They look at you like, what are you trying to do? It's like emancipation, really. It's something we're doing gradually.
Yes, I agree.
So it's not something we have to do in a rush. So there's progress, but we can do better.
Yes, no, I understand what you mean.
You know,
so what you want is less of change on an individual. I mean, it's both change on an individual basis and, you know, sort of macro society level.
Exactly.
Because the perceptions persist, and the reasons they persist is because we live in a patriarchal world, basically. Right. And how do you think your conference is going to change that?
Like I said, we're narrowing it down to women, physically challenged women, less privileged children, and some single parents who are really struggling. So we're not into like going the bigger way, but we just want to empower women with disabilities.
Right.
Do you understand? That's my core area, really. And it's like I said, it's not a competition. It's a way to empower them through skills acquisitions. And like like the other speaker said, now it's about funding. The funding are so limited. The resources are limited, and there's no awareness to all this. So we want to bring a kind of awareness to these people. We want to be a voice to them.
Right.
We want to stand as an ambassador to them, those who are physically challenged, who are less privileged women, the widows as well. We want to be their voice.
Sure.
We want them to have access to a lot of things, medical cares and all that. So we want to be their voice.
We'll come back and talk about this some more, so stay with us. You're watching the Arise interview, plenty more still ahead as we continue our chat about the Global Women in Leadership Conference that's kicking off in Abuja this week. Stay with us. Arise interview. I'm Charles Onyegolu. Now, if we want to transform the position of women in a society such as Nigeria, the key opportunity appears to be education. It is believed that the more women are educated, the more they are likely to have a greater voice in society. But beyond this, there are so many other issues to talk about, which is why some of the most interesting women with their own extraordinary profiles are gathering here in Abuja to take part in a day of conversations about the issues that concern them. It's called the Global Women in Leadership Conference, and the focus is on the role of women in senior positions across the board and everywhere, in fact, and how they can bridge the gender gap in leadership in Nigeria and in generally helping to raise the standard of living in this country. And the convener of that conference, Olaide Awosedo, who runs an NGO known as the Gallant Women Ability Foundation, is still with me in the studio. Thank you, for staying with us. And just generally speaking, a lot of this has to do with what is embedded within culture, isn't it?
Culture, yes. It has to do with culture as well.
Right. Well, tell us a bit about that.
The culture part of it is, I would say, I'll come back to Africa and Nigeria as a country. The thing is, some people believe that women has to get to a stage and that's it. It stops there. They can't go further. Even growing up, some of our parents in the olden days, they believed they'd rather send the male child
to school
rather than the woman. But the way things are going, I think women are now self-sufficient. Now we're well-read, and we're trying to aspire, because even what I'm doing, really, it's a passion. It's not something, it's not like a competition or something. It's something that just indicts in me that really I want to aspire to do this. So it's just in me. And I feel every other woman too that wants to aspire to the top would always think like that. So
but education is key, though, isn't it?
Obviously.
Because I mean, the point really is that a lot of these stereotypes tend to be more prevalent in the rural areas, aren't they? Where there's less education, the women are less aware of what their rights are. You know, like you raise the issue of widows and that kind of thing. I mean, that's a big problem as well in some sort of traditional societies.
Some areas in Nigeria, the widows are not, their voices are not heard, because like I feel probably when their husbands are late and they feel, oh, the woman has to do this, she has to do that. She spends so much time, and being a widow, she's so dependent on most of the family members, for those who are not really empowered before they lost their husband. So it's really a problem for widows to try to pick up themselves after the death of their husband. So it's something we want to look into to empower them. Well,
to be fair, there's been a lot said. I mean, a lot of work is being done in that direction. But I get the point that the social fabric of Nigeria, what I find a little bit confusing is that it at once represses, but also allows women to progress. And it just sounds hugely paradoxical.
Yeah, it does. Yeah, it does. It does. It does.
So how do you cope with that? Because obviously that's, I mean, you have to do your your analysis of what's going on in society if you're looking for ways to get out of it. Because, I mean, you know, the men are less likely to do it.
The men are less likely to do it. But the thing, like I said, is we're more into to empower those who are physically challenged.
No, I understand that, but I mean, your conference is a Global Women in Leadership Conference. You didn't say Global Women or Global Disability Conference. I mean, that's what it is. So it speaks generally
for
women
empowerment. Women coming together, those women in leadership coming together to partner, to share ideas, knowledge of how they got there, how we can do it. We're looking up to them. So we're looking up to these women in leadership. We learn from them. They are mentors. We want to learn from them. We want to know how they got there. So they need to mentor us more. We're still learning. It's still a learning curve for us.
So what are you actually going to be saying to them when they turn up at your conference on Thursday?
It's going to be an interactive session. Whereby it's 2 segments there. We have discussants, we have speakers talking about how they got to where they are today. So they need to inspire us. We're still learning. So the women, we've invited women who are really doing great things globally, not even in Nigeria itself. We have women doing great things globally. So we want to learn from them. We want them to tell us how and where they got to this stage, and we'll learn from there. And by so doing, together we can run this race.
Right. So you basically want them to help, because clearly, as you said, there are stumbling blocks along the way, but they've managed to navigate their way through.
Yes. So
and you want to know what their secret is.
Yes, we want to learn from them. So it's an interactive session whereby they'll speak and tell us and mentor us on how to do it. So
And is it your sense that the representation of women in leadership positions in Nigeria is increasing, or do you think it's regressing?
No, it's increasing. And that's what's really giving us the courage to come out. It's really, because I know that one day, someday, a woman that you least expect will, be the president of Nigeria one day.
Well, it's not funny. I think it's a brilliant idea.
Oh yeah, Kamala Harris, she's the vice president of the United States of America.
She could be the next president of America.
Likewise, Uncle Juwala. So we're getting there. So definitely, someone you least expect would just be the president of Nigeria.
Well, to be fair, I'm not trying not to expose myself, but I mean the truth is that I don't actually see any difference between genders. I mean, I don't look at people as, oh, that's a woman, and therefore this is. I mean, to me that's the most ridiculous thing I ever heard.
That's why we're trying to break the stereotype, break the barriers, and network together till there's no difference.
But do you think part of the problem as well is that individual women are seen as the representatives of their entire gender? So if for instance you, Olaide, were to be given leadership charge of something and you happen to fail at it, I'm not saying you will, do you think that they would say that women have failed rather than that you as an individual has failed? And is that part of the problem?
Yes, they would say women have failed.
So they're more likely to say, well, we put a woman there and she couldn't make it. So stereotyping the whole sort of, rather than an individual.
Yes, a representative, regardless of my background, regardless of where I'm coming from or anything, they said a woman has failed. So that's why we want to be in that boardroom, stay together and do something unique, something extraordinary.
In concrete terms, what are you looking to achieve? Are you looking for more quotas, for example, for women in leadership, which is what some people have argued, that there should be a law that says, we must have a certain percentage of women? Or are you trying to reshape change on a much bigger, more fundamental level?
No, I'm not trying to do that. I'm trying to have women allotted some positions in government.
So you'd rather have quotas?
Yes, we'd rather have that. And like I said, in as much as we were talking about women as well, I'm not going to move away from talking about women with disabilities because that's the voice.
Well, I mean, it's all inclusive, isn't it?
But but we just want to be particular about that because we don't want them to see the disability. We want them to see beyond that, this physical disability. A woman who has got physical challenges can do better, regardless of her physical challenges. She's got a brain. So we want to be allotted, women want to be allotted some positions, women in politics, governments and other, industries. We want women to get involved. We want more women. It could be 50-50 if possible. So we want a real change, and we just want to break that barrier. We just want to break that stereotype. We want to work together and to achieve great things.
Well, we wish you all the very best. Olaide Awosedo runs an NGO known as the Gallant Women Ability Foundation, and she's convening that conference on women in leadership. That's it for this edition of the Arise interview. Join us again tomorrow. From me and the entire team here in Abuja, bye-bye, and thank you for watching.